All right, it is Monday, first day of June, 2022. It felt like it felt like the first day of Hades yesterday.
It did. It was unbelievably hot.
Humid in Virginia. It's already hot and humid. You know me, I'm a big heat baby. Yes. So when it gets above like 76,
poor guy from Syracuse.
When it gets above 76, I'm like, what are we even doing up here? But we have a lot to talk about today. We're talking about reimagining the showroom experience. Right, spent our hand in the dirt. We're also talking about EV charging infrastructure lagging behind actual demand and why the UK is going to try to steal all of our best talent. I don't think we have music today.
We don't have music. There's no music.
Right. There's no music. So when we roll with the setup. So we're in a hotel lobby right here. We've just decided we just stopped caring about what anybody thinks.
Where we go, everybody's walking past us. It's great.
The trucks, the
really
lobby.
Nice spot. Actually, really nice spot. We were if you watched or listened to yesterday's podcast, you know we're hanging out with Liza Myers Borches, her team here
Scott
at
Simons yesterday. Spent some time with him.
Got to see him at Carter Myers Automotive, and one of the COO there recommended this place called the Draftsman, and it's a really unique mix of old and new. So we feel like we're in a little bit of a setting. Hopefully you're experiencing that a little bit with us this morning.
All right, to frame this up this morning. Sometimes we mention Simon Sinek because he always puts out these little shots every morning in his email. And today's was specifically relevant. It sounds like this. A culture is strong when people work with each other, for each other, and a culture is weak when people work against each other and for themselves.
Yeah.
And yesterday, I think we got a really great example of what it is when people work for each other, right, and not for themselves. The CMA, Carter Myers Automotive Group, is really a great example of people going in the same direction for the same reason. And, we see this in all different ways all across the industry, right? And it's always there's no one way to do it.
Yes.
But you know it when you see it.
You know what I love is when you get in these organizations and some of the organizations that you and I have gotten to go in over the past year and years, when you start to talk to the teammates and the people around it, you go from the leadership, and then you get to the teammates that are and associates and employees, and it's always interesting to kind of hear how the take of the overall vision of the company is just embedded, and almost they sometimes even get more passionate about the way that the brand is represented on the ground level. And when you see that, there's a strong culture, because it's you can't mess with this, because this is a part of who I am.
That's a really great way to put it. I almost think of it like a great fabric.
Yeah.
Right? It's all belongs together, but there's definitely different texture as you meet the different people. And yesterday, I can't tell you how many times, I went up to somebody and they could not wait. They knew I was a visitor.
Yes.
And they could not wait to tell me about how great the company is,
or their perspective about the company,
or
right?
Their story with the company.
Yeah, it was kind of like, oh, you're a visitor. Let me tell you the story.
Yeah.
And that type of excitement, I think, for if you're in business, and that's the type of excitement that people, instead of just oh, hey, how you doing? Why are you here?
And this is my task that I do.
This is my task. It's no, let me tell you the story behind why I'm here, what I do, what we do, and it wasn't. It's not a facade when that happens. It's just everyone kind of rowing together, like the Simon Sinek thing.
It's easy to think, I want to caution people against hearing stories about, these organizations that we put on a pedestal, right? Because every organization, man, stuff is broke, right? In every organization. And so there's no Disneyland when it comes to business, right? There's great culture, but other things are broken, right? Like in ASOTU, our little growing community, right?
Yes.
People believe in what we're doing. There are good vibes, but there's also a lot that's broke, right?
Exactly. I think that's important to point out, is that a lot of times, especially in automotive, we will start to kind of follow, or even just in general, there's kind of this influencer nature where it's oh, that they just must have it all dialed in and right.
How can we do what they're doing?
Yeah, and I think that one thing that you've been pointing out is that there's so many different ways to get really good business done, and as long as you're constantly approaching your business with the need for innovation, the need for excellence, the necessity to shift and change, then you're doing it right because you're constantly challenging yourself. Speaking of stop, right? Speaking of constantly needing to innovate and change, Honda recently has come out with their newly redesigned showroom concept. And actually, it was interesting. We were in the car yesterday talking to Liza about some of the plans that they have and the franchises that they have, and she mentioned Honda.
We went to a Honda store. We went to Scott Simon's Honda store,
saying like their new reimagined showroom is smaller, more compact, more like thoughtful on how to deliver an online to offline experience. And then we get online this morning and we're kind of searching the interwebs, and Jalopnik, you can see the link in the article, has this article about how Honda plans to redesign dealerships. The quote is, into modern retail spaces that are basically terminals along the way to EV ownership, not destination. And I think that that's really important to think about this modern retail experience, but also that the showroom is not necessarily just the end point, that it's a part of the overall journey. Right, and I've talked about this a lot, is that designing a retail experience, and not just a retail experience, but a visit experience, a service experience along a journey, and like mapping the overall ebb and flow of the customer journey in and out of your online and offline spaces. And Honda's kind of taking that approach really seriously with EVs and with a new generation of retail experience for auto.
So what can a dealer do with this? Obviously don't have, unless you're on an advisory council, right, you might not have direct say into what is going to happen. Yeah. But for sure there is something you can do, right? There are things that you do have control over in your showroom, even if, like, you're not up for a refresh, you're not up for building a new showroom. Like, don't check out of the mindset that when someone walks or drives onto your property, not when they walk in your front door, when they drive onto your property, right? It's just... people assume that's where the customer parking is. Oh, they'll see it. It's close to the building. No, actually not. There might be, 3 salespeople standing, by the main entrance, what might make someone like go away from it.
Yep.
Right. And so there are things already that are happening in your store. And I bet if you spend like an hour, right, watching how people come in to service and sales and interact with your store, you're going to learn right away that, like, oh, there are probably a few small improvements we can make.
Yep.
In that customer journey. So it's not like an all or nothing thing. Yes, large scale design and realizing like designing it from the ground up is important.
That's a whole structure, and the OEMs have to be involved in all that. But yes,
don't check out.
Exactly. Think about the customer journey from like lot to finish, and where are they headed? What are they going through, navigating? Is it clear? Is it are there necessary movements that they need to make in order for them to feel confident, right? There's this, I always, when I would send salespeople shopping, it was so funny to hear, and we would do mystery shops, and everybody does it, so everybody does it.
Yeah.
But it was so interesting always to hear the perception of like that. They had just been hired at a dealership or something, and they would get this anxiousness and not really know where to park.
They know the game,
and they at least know some level of the game. And so think about that customer pulling on your lot. How do they feel?
That's a great exercise in empathy.
It's so good.
It's a great exercise. So don't check out. Pay attention to it, because it is the experience. And even if you're an industry partner, right? Maybe your front door is your website. Think about how people. Now we have a lot more conversation around like website landing, and it's like people have full control over that experience as far as like I can go to another tab, I can close the browser.
I don't want to get into the OEM program thing, but
I'm talking about if you're an industry partner. And you're trying to get dealers or other people to come into your ecosystem, right? It's still the front door, and there's still a journey involved. And if your website doesn't involve taking someone through a journey, it's just like, here's all my stuff.
Right.
I do this, and I do this, and I do this, and then pow, 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 right? Like,
yes.
No, think about it, journey mode. Okay, we're going to move on. So EV charging stations, Wall Street Journal article this morning saying we're predicting already that the charging infrastructure is going to be lagging behind EV rollout. Big surprise.
No way.
Really, Kyle? Really?
I'm really excited about this article because it allows us to further necessitate a trigger pad that we have to make.
It's coming. It's coming. You'll hear it in a second. So basically, the Biden administration is planning to hand out $7.5 billion across the country to states to invest in the EV charging infrastructure. And at surface, that sounds really great. Yes, We need money. Infrastructure is important. It spurs around all kinds of business. There's one problem. That states haven't spent the money they already have. Over 4 years ago, remember the VW scandal? Remember that thing?
I do remember that
right.
thing.
So it's $2.8 billion settlement for environmental to increase environmental activity because the diesel thing and they were polluting the environment more, and they said they were. Right. So we're like, okay, we're going to make you give all this money to make the environment better. Well, about 400, almost 500 million of that was handed out to states to build EV charging infrastructure, and at this point, less than half of the money has been spent 4 years later. So, states just aren't spending the money. I don't know if they're planning. I don't know if they don't know what to do. But the government's about to give another $7.5 billion, and it's like, well, the states need to figure out how to start building and spending that.
They should hand it to the public sector, is what I think, or to the private sector.
To the private sector. What's happening,
right? To the private sector, because I think that would be a quicker way. Because infrastructures are already tough from the public sector perspective. Look at the roads in your state, right? And I mean, it doesn't matter what state you're in. Everybody's like, road stink, and so I do think that we have to figure out how to get the public money to the private sector a lot quicker
that's
in
on
the
states.
EV world, right?
If you look at the map in the linked article, some states have done that really well.
Yep.
And some states have done it.
At least done it.
They've done it. Like Texas, for instance, handed out most of their money, and they had an application project. And when the applications opened, magically, I bet there was no conversations or previous relationships implied in any of this. But 85% of the money went right to Shell Corporation. So. That's probably not going to cut it either. I'm sure there was no scotch or cigars or, cowboy hats sitting around and
late
laughing.
night drinks or anything
like that. Had
like
nothing to do with any of that. And but here's the thing: convenience store owners were applying for it, right? You think of the ways that people spend a little bit of time and could charge in the fast charging network, especially. And so this is just an element of infrastructure. We can't even say catching up with need because the need's not there. It's not there. It's a really weird scenario.
It's chicken and egg a little bit, right? But it also kind of all has to land at the same time in order for it to work. The kind of numbers as they fall out is the Biden administration is saying we need 500,000 chargers by the year 2030. But a company called McKinsey & Company, who's done a lot of research across infrastructure needs, is saying that 1.2 million are needed. That's 700,000 chargers
less
short.
Than half. Even if we get to 500,000, we're 700,000 short. Currently, there are only 5,000 fast charging locations in the U.S. A total of 10,000 fast chargers. And if you don't know this about EV technology, you're about to. But a fast charger will charge your battery to 80%. In about 30 minutes, which when you're charging feels still a really long time. But if you don't have a fast charger, right, and which has to do with enough power going to that
you're talking 8 hours.
Yeah, that's
to
not
charge
the
whole thing.
Or you sit there for an hour and you get 100 miles.
Right.
Yeah. So obviously we're very far behind, or we're going to be very far behind. What can you do right now? I think it's a great opportunity to invest in the infrastructure in your dealership and become a spot where people know they can go for a fast charge.
Fast charger. Coffee shop. Boom.
And it better be good coffee if he's around.
It better be good coffee.
Or he's going to spit on your fast charger on the way by. No, but for real, this is a great time to think a little bit more retail mindset with your store. We're talking about how are people welcomed into your property, right? Fast charging stations. Look, you know what it's like when you get the reputation for the fast Wi-Fi, or everyone's I'm going to that place because they have so fast charging stations. We're going to be behind. You already have the infrastructure in place to get most of the stuff built quickly.
Absolutely.
So little retail opportunity. We got one more story. It kind of tags off of something we've been talking about for the last, probably the last 6 months, but we talked about it yesterday.
Really yesterday,
the labor shortage, the Sandsdemic. There's not enough people. We experienced it last night. Right, we had dinner with the CMA crew, and we're like, we're traveling. We need some ice cream, right?
Because that's how we roll.
And we're like, oh, this is a cool little ice cream shop. We walked in. There was a line of about 10 people. And then we realized there's one older woman scooping ice cream by herself, and I kept waiting for someone to come out of the back.
I know. I thought so too. And it was wild because in this area there was just a ton of restaurants, ton of movement, ton of people, and yet in whatever it was,
8 p.m.,
8 o'clock on a Tuesday, one person scooping ice cream. And so, it's every industry, it's every person. And now the most recent news is that the UK has created the opportunity for college graduates from 20 U.S. schools that they prioritized to give them visas without the need for a job. So if you think about like international visas, typically you need a firm job offer from a certain level of corporation in order to get that visa for that work visa. But people with graduate and with master's degrees and associate degrees and bachelor's degrees can get 2 years, and anything PhD can get 3 years of a visa with only the need to prove that you can like live for 1 month there. And right?
The strategy, right, is like come here, right? Meet somebody you love, right? Find a reason to stay, and then work here.
It also says they can bring their families. Like the whole family gets a visa.
So look, the labor shortage is it's global.
Yes.
Right. It really is a population thing. It really is like a developed country. Like we're going to compete for your talent.
Yes.
Which just doubles down on the mentality, like have an amazing place to be, have an amazing place to work, have an amazing place to attract. It's an attractional labor market right now.
It is. And go into the unique spaces literally a country is going to another country to solve labor shortages. What do you have to do to solve the labor shortages locally? If that's what's happening globally, you have to be inventive. You have to create resources and a people network to be able to attract that talent for sure.
Yep. Well, there you go. It's going to be another day in the dirt for us, right? We're out in and out of dealerships, getting our hands in the dirt, figuring out how to make this industry better, how to encourage some people. We hope that you go out and encourage some people, make them understand what it is to be in the industry we're in. Make them understand what it is that we have the opportunity every day to serve one another, to serve other people, and have a lot of fun doing it.
Let's go.